CFP quarterfinals kick things off on New Year's Eve with the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic between Miami and Ohio State. The Hurricanes pulling off the biggest upset of the CFP era when they sent the defending national champion Buckeyes home with a 24-14 loss. Ohio State's offense showed a little bit of life in the second half, but Miami's run game and the defense led the Canes to a win. Here's Carson Beck and Ohio State head coach Ryan Day after the game.
This is all I got. This is what I've lived for my whole entire life. You know, when you get in these big-time moments, you fall back on your preparation, and when, the moment calls up, you rise to it.
We put ourselves behind the 8 ball. We worked really hard during the last 3 weeks leading up to this game to come out of the gates and win the first quarter, win the first half, be ready to go. I thought we had an excellent plan on that, and what we did, I think the guys bought into it, but at the end of the day, we didn't get it done, and that starts with me.
The part I hear from Ryan Day the most, RC, is we spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this game. This is a team that came out flat. It was 14-0 in no time. And that pick six, which happens in the second quarter, was the back-breaking interception, the back-breaking play they could not recover from. So do you walk away today more impressed by Miami in the way they pulled that off, or disappointed by Ohio State?
I'm more impressed with Miami. Miami is this year's college football playoff Ohio State. Okay. The U is back. If you play for Miami, you look to the sideline, and it's not people that we theoretically call Hall of Famers. It's real Hall of Famers on the sideline. Michael Irvin reliving the White House Mike days. Ray Lewis on the sideline pacing up and down. Andre Johnson, Edgerrin James. And when Keontae Scott gets that interception and it's the pick six, you can't tell me you're not thinking of Antrell Roll and Sean Taylor, right? When Jacoby Thomas finishes the game with an interception, you can't tell me you're not thinking of Ed Reed finishing the game with an interception, right? When they're running the football, when Fletcher is getting down the field, when you're a 4-minute game and you're pounding the rock, you can't tell me you ain't thinking about Frank Gore and Edgerrin James. And then the only player that shows up for Ohio State is actually from South Florida. So if you are Miami right now, you are thinking to yourself, the U is back. We are the same team that we always said we were, whether it was back in the day with Warren Sapp and those guys, or when it was Ray Lewis, or when it was Ed Reed and Sean Taylor, Jeremy Shockey. If you're the Miami Hurricanes, you feel so good about where you are because every single question about whether or not you belong has been answered.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was all Miami. It was the physicality of Miami that was on display last night. We seen it in the first college football playoff game when they went to Texas A&M on the road. It was the physicality there with that defense with Rumi Bain and Hakeem Messidor as defensive ends, and also Fletcher at the running back position. They rushed the football effectively in that first game, and then last night they brought the fight to Ohio State. Ohio State, they were more receiving everything versus giving everything. Sure. And you see Michael Irvin on this screen over here with this belt in his hand. That's exactly what happened when you looked at the Miami Hurricanes, but it all starts with their head coach. See, their head coach, Mario Cristobal, he's a guy that won 2 national championships at Miami. He understands more than anybody what the U is when you talk about the U is back. Mario Cristobal is a guy that was an offensive lineman, so he understands the trenches. He did it when he was at Alabama as an assistant coach. When he was the head coach at Oregon, it was all about the trenches. But he had this recruiting class that Reuben Bain Jr. was a part of, right, that changed the trajectory of Miami football to being back to where they were in the 90s, in the early 2000s when they were winning national championships. But for me, when I look at Ohio State, I don't think it was a fluke what we seen last night. I don't think it's just, hey, they had 25 days off, because if you go back to that Big Ten championship game, they got whooped just like that versus Indiana. So I think it was their DNA this season. And Miami just had the same DNA with better athletes, in my opinion, than Indiana did, and they exploited them once again for the second game.
The thing that you didn't mention about Mario Cristobal is when you're talking about all of those dudes on the sideline, there's something that people who played for certain schools or who are from a certain area understand that visiting coaches don't, right? Like when Brian Kelly comes to LSU and I'm walking up to go to Pro Day and people are asking me, who are you with? Well, I'm by myself because my picture is up in this weight room. Right? I get to walk in because I'm part of why these buildings stand. He understands that about Miami. Everybody who played at that school can walk that sideline, can talk to those kids, can touch those kids. You can see legacy whenever you walk into that building. That's what it's about. If you have a school that has history, allow history to be a part of your present. And I think as much as he's realized building a team from the trenches and what it means to be physical and how all of those things help you execute when it comes to the X's and O's, he also understands what the energy of Miami is about. And having people like Michael Irvin there with that sort of access is huge.
Well, and he's the first person to tell you that Miami isn't back yet. It was careful to say that in the post-game interview. He said, we're getting there.
Because he's one of the staples, though, right?
Of
because
course.
he understands what it means to be fully back. But to RC's point, look at his coaching staff. You have a guy in Jason Taylor, even though he didn't play at the University of Miami, he played for the Miami Dolphins, right? And he was a staple in that community. You look at the wide receiver coach, Kevin Beard, played at Miami. The offensive line coach played high school football with Mario Cristobal. So a lot of guys on their coaching staff is embedded in that community, and they understand what it means to be a Miami Hurricane because they grew up with it.
Well, let's look at the other side of this, because I've got a lot of questions about what happened with Ryan Day, Harry, and just where the blame is assigned here. So we know Brian Hartline, offensive coordinator, he's going to be USF's coach. Who was calling plays yesterday? Not Brian Hartline. That was Ryan Day's decision. He took over play calling duties. Both of you guys know how long it takes to get into a rhythm. He hasn't done it in 2 years. So the offense starts out slow. A little bit of life there in the second half. When they come back, they're running a lot of 12 personnel, but they were never able to get the job done. As you look at, and you heard Ryan Day there earlier, and you look at the totality of what it means to have a defending national champion out, how much blame do you assign to Ryan Day?
He has to get a lot of the blame. When I look at the 2 losses that Miami had this season versus Louisville and SMU, and what both of those schools were able to do versus Miami's defense which is a very aggressive defense, they used their aggressiveness against them. You look at the game versus Miami had versus Louisville, Jeff Brom probably gave them 7 or 8 different personnels or 7 or 8 different looks on offense on the very first drive. That's not what I seen from an Ohio State football team last night. What I seen from Ohio State is, hey, we're the big, bad Ohio State Buckeyes. We are the Ohio State University. We're going to do what we do. But I also thought that Ryan Day didn't put his young quarterback in the best situation, right? Because he allowed him to drop back and pass the football when he should have been running the football a little bit more like he did in the second half. Protect your quarterback and allow him to feel that game. So when it comes to that part of it, and then also when you're preparing for a matchup, when you've been off for 25 days, you can prepare your team for a team like Miami because you have the 5-star recruits. You have an Art Bell Reese who's going to be a first-round draft pick. They have guys, 4 or 5 guys on their defense that are going to be first-round draft pick. So you have to go good on good. You have to be physical in practice because if you were playing a game that weekend, the previous weekend that Miami did, you would have been physical in that matchup. Guys had to go out there and play the game. So you have to go good on good, tackle football. The physicality part is where they lost the ball game. And they didn't capitalize off of Miami's mistakes. No. That first fumble, they didn't go down and get points, and then they missed the field goal before halftime. You have to get points in those situations, in my opinion.
Bruh, it's just a lot of this blame's on Ryan Day. Ryan Day cut off his nose to spite his face. He was trying to be too smart. Yep. Right? He was trying to say that Brian Hartline, who you should know more than anyone, the level of receiver that he's put into the NFL, the fact that throughout this season you have a top 4, right, Heisman finisher. You have Carnell Tate, who's going to be a top 10 wide receiver. Jeremiah Smith is obviously an all-world wide receiver. Bo Jackson, a young running back that's ascending late in the season. All of that is with
tight end.
Yeah, all of that is with Brian Hartline calling plays. And Brian Hartline being at USF and trying to get things started at South Florida isn't going to take his focus away from what he wants to do for his alma mater, for what he understands needs to take place at this school right now and what's most important. So you overthought it. And then now overthinking it, you forget that calling plays is as much an art as it is a science. It's about feel. It's about understanding the dudes that we're with, knowing when Julian Saying isn't feeling, knowing that Bo hasn't gotten the ball or we haven't gotten the run game going in the first half. And all of those things are things you haven't touched in a long time. And so for the first time since 2016 against Clemson, you're shut out in the first half. And whether you have a great second half or not, when you playing a team that builds off energy and momentum, it's difficult to come back.
Teams who have a first-round bye since we expanded to 12 teams in the CFP, 0 for 5. We're going to get into
also,
that
too,
a little bit
I'm so
more.
sorry. Who have they beat? Like, honestly.
It's fair.
Like, we've been Big Ten. Big Ten. The Big Ten might be sorry. Because you go look back and you look at the schedule, and obviously Ohio State beat Texas in the first game when we thought Texas was something that they weren't, at least at the time. And after that, you run through a season, and if you look at their schedule, it's just Michigan. Michigan at the end at 18, and then you lose to Indiana. This might be the most talented team they've played.
Sure. And I mean, and I think that's
There's no might be. That is the most talented team they played.
Well, that's a conversation specific to them and their schedule. Indiana plays a Big Ten schedule, and they played a much harder Big Ten schedule than Ohio State did. We'll get more into that.
Sounds like somebody that went to Indiana.
Yeah. Sounds like somebody who's right. All right, time for a quick take. Hurricanes royalty, as RC pointed out, were in the house last night, from Ray Lewis to Michael Irvin. Every time they showed the playmaker on the sideline, he's as hype as the guys playing in the game. RC, what do you make of Michael Irvin last night?
Well, first off, I love Irv. I think Irv's energy is infectious. I think his love for his alma mater is actually something I admire. So many times these guys come from these places that allow them to change their lives, and they forget what happened at those schools. And when Michael Irvin's on the sideline on all fours at Texas A&M and supporting you throughout this season, he deserves to be here for this moment. He's the reason all of you are here for this moment. And when he pulls off his belt at the end of the game, he's saying exactly what happened. Miami put belt to ass. And that's what Miami does. That's who Miami is. That's who Mario Cristobal is building them up back to be. And oh, don't forget, he in Dallas too. Another place where he put butts in the seat. I think it's amazing to see Michael Irvin there. I think it's amazing to see him embraced in the way that he is. And I don't even know if those young men understand how valuable of a piece he is to have each and every day on that sideline.
Well said.